When you think of a veil, you think of a bride on her wedding day. You think of her getting ready for the special ceremony. She's entering the church. She's walking down the aisle with her father, and her father hands her to the groom. And vows are exchanged on that day, and everything changes for the bride and the groom. There's an old statue of Booker T. Washington located in two sections of the American South. One is at Tuskegee University in Alabama, and the other is at a high school in Atlanta. It's known as the Veil of Ignorance. It's Booker T. Washington lifting the veil of ignorance from a kneeling slave. It's very symbolic. It's a metaphor. It's the slaves being freed and marrying Western civilization, marrying freedom, and having the opportunity to develop themselves, to reach their full potential. And that's the legacy when it comes to Booker T. Washington. He was born a slave, and at a young age he was able to take advantage of his human development opportunity. Part of the reason why there are certain people who didn't like him is because of the fact that he cozied up to whites. It was like the politics that he played with white Southerners, but he was playing the long game. It was always about the development of blacks and blacks developing themselves through industry, through entrepreneurship, through education. And certain things that I found where it's like it was very Machiavellian the way he moved in the American South because of race relations, because of how intense things were in that environment. He inspired so many people who came after him. He had a great passion for the development of blacks because he felt that the country would evolve eventually, but blacks had to prove themselves through their skills and talents, and it was their skills that would transcend everything. And he knew that America would evolve and accept blacks as equal citizens, and that's the game he was playing in the long run. What's so interesting is that he got many godfathers, several godfathers of the Gilded Age, Andrew Carnegie, John D. Rockefeller, these prominent figures during that time period to donate to his schools. And so it's like they gave back, and with that money, he was able to build Tuskegee University into what it became. It was known as the Tuskegee Machine. It was like an empire. And it was like this octopus with all these arms and legs because Booker T became the most powerful black man in the country. He had connections in politics. He had connections in business. And there were many whites, they saw him how he was an equal like them in a way where it's like he was highly educated and it's like he could play that game of, you know, American politics. He was setting an example for what America would, you know, eventually become, or what black Americans, of how they would prove themselves in American society, of how they would prove themselves to be worthy of respect. And that's what's so interesting about his story. One of the biggest presentations of his life was in Atlanta in 1895, where he was before black Southerners and white Southerners. And he made this big speech where he was talking about, like, despite the conditions, he was very optimistic about the country and how it would evolve. And he was encouraging blacks to cast down their bucket. It was like this metaphor that it was like, yes, the laws are different, but don't be afraid to look at your fellow neighbor, your fellow white Southerner, like he's human just like you. Set a higher bar, and don't be afraid to cast down your bucket. There was this analogy where he has this ship lost at sea, and they need water from a friendly vessel, and it was like cast down your bucket where you are. And it was like this metaphor that even my teachers taught me while I was growing up, where it was like, don't be afraid to cast down your bucket. Don't be afraid to ask your neighbor for help, to help you develop, to help you build something. I think that was something that was very powerful, and he showed that through his examples of befriending so many powerful business leaders who donated to his organization. So as you can see, Booker T turned out to be right. The country did change over a period of time. It seems that laws changed, and it seems that it did come down to economics. It did come down to developing yourselves through skills and talent and making yourself so available and so marketable so that bigotry would not stand in your way. There would always be human biases, but it was like your skills and your talents would transcend on so many different levels that it's like people would judge you by that instead of judging you by your skin color. But there would still be human biases because we don't live in a utopian society. Booker T is still a controversial figure. He died young, but 100 years later, today, there's still people who side with Booker T's philosophy that involves education and entrepreneurship. He had a different philosophy than his enemy, W.E.B. Du Bois. There are people who still side with Du Bois. So it's like you see these different factions, like these two godfathers, and people have their opinions about both men. And you could see like it's this ongoing feud it's a multi-generational feud that still takes place in politics, business, entertainment, academia, and journalism. And it affects modern day Black development. And that's a whole other story that I can go into. When you think of Booker T's legacy and you think of the veil of ignorance, it's the best way to describe it is the student of a teacher can also be seen as a child of a parent, a vessel they pour into. Whether the parent or teacher pours wisdom or blood they sacrifice, the child is still a vessel. The child can also be seen as a ship that needs to be ready before its voyage. That's what human development is, and that is what Booker T emphasized throughout his entire career.